I want to invite on stage to join me in conversation NIF's director of affiliates. Now listen, he literally hasn't slept since October 7th. He's been working so hard as someone who's been watching from our screens NIF's emergency response since everything began. It has been really, really crazy to see how people on the ground have basically been replacing the grassroots and civil society organizations with NIF, have been basically replacing the state. And this person, who I'm going to invite on stage, he has been working tirelessly. So I hope you get some rest after. But I want to invite Hillel Assaf to join me in conversation. Yeah, let's sit here. We have the official water. Yeah. Hi, Hillel.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to share?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I've been in London for 3 days, but this isn't a poppy. I haven't converted yet. This is actually from, it looks like a poppy, but it's actually from the Gaza envelope. I went there about a month ago to visit friends who returned to live in their kibbutz. And this is something they've been doing to, get some money. All the proceeds are going to the kibbutzim, to the reconstruction and rebuilding of the South. So it's just a matter of coincidence that it works so well.
Hillel and I spoke on the day where Trump got reelected. Netanyahu fired Gallant. The streets were there were protests all over, and the uncertainties were even more extreme that day. And I think, the one thing that I want to ask you with all this mess is, did you have enough protein this morning?
Yeah, I actually went to a Sunday roast, so maybe I am converting quickly.
What did you have?
I had the roast beef.
Ooh, nice.
But to talk about the elephant in the room, which I think is the latest news cycle, which is kind of, I'm sure everyone has something specific on their minds when they're thinking about the situation at the moment. Be it Trump being reelected, the war going on, 101 hostages still in Gaza, people evacuated in the north, the feeling that there's no end in sight, no strategy. And the list goes on and on. The Knesset reconvened. I don't want to get our moods down so after your wonderful jokes, but we know the situation is dire. And I think on top of all that, there's another thing that we're feeling, which is, I think personally everyone can feel it in the room. It's feels like a war on normalcy, on normality, on what used to be normal is not anymore. And I think it's very tough for everyone that the times are shifting, the news is changing, and I mean, you got a Labor government installed, so you might be a bit happier, but for a lot of people it feels like there's no ray of sunshine. But what I think, and I think everyone in the New Israel Fund agrees, is that to wage through this war on normalcy, you have to have a very strong moral backbone. That's the only way you could weather the storm, because there's a constant effort to change what we think is right and wrong, and the only way we can persevere is if we remind ourselves who we are, what our values are, and what we need to do to achieve those values. That's what helps me in these difficult times, remembering what I think is right. And I encourage everyone to do the same during these next couple of years, which might be difficult.
Can you walk us through, in detail, how I don't think many people realize this. When the war started, there were no institutions, nothing was functioning. And NIF stepped in and basically replaced the state in many ways. And it's still ongoing until now. And you have been really in the forefront and have been doing so much. So can you walk us through from the first moment, from the emergency response, what have you been doing and what is still happening on the ground today?
Sure, thank you for the question. October 7th caught everyone by surprise. I think anyone who says otherwise isn't telling the truth. In fact, it's my wife's birthday, October 7th. Yeah, so we were away trying to have a good time, woke up to very bad news. And I think the first day or two, most of the people I know, most of the country took them a long time to kind of wake up and realize what's happening, but the people who understood that they need to be active, they started being active, I think, 2-3 days after the matter. And before it was kind of chickens running like chickens without heads. And I'll share a bit about myself. I was a combat soldier in the military, and I had this urge from within that maybe I should go and enlist, and I didn't know, I don't want to do it anymore. No one called me up, so I was waiting with a lot of energy. And then Mickey, our director in Israel, called me up, and he told me, I'm sure you're having these thoughts, but we're working on an emergency response, and I think we need you much more than the IDF does. And I said yes immediately to the offer, and then started the most intense part of my career and possibly of my life, which was a real privilege and honor of leading the response of NIF to the emergency. We called it the Emergency Safety Net. We started it, I think, within a week. We were already up and going. We had a 4-tier plan in place. And the first things we were doing, even before we had the plan, was to pay for hotel rooms. You know, we had the money, we had the liquid money, and people from Ofakim, which is a town not far from Gaza, they had to evacuate, but the government was completely absent. It did not show up. And we had the liquid money to call up hotels and say, we're paying for these 20 families, charge it on us. And that was amazing. It was the right thing to do at the moment. And we felt very privileged to have the ability to do it. And we also did a ton of humanitarian aid to Bedouin citizens of Israel, to anyone who was in need. But it's important for me to stress the fact that this is not what NIF does usually. We are a social change organization. We don't buy fish, we buy hooks, right, or fishing rods. And it's not sustainable to just buy hotel rooms and fill in for the government. So our plan was divided into 4, as I said: humanitarian aid to those who are most in need, those who are most overlooked. Unfortunately, on October 7th and the months after that, that was a lot of people from the north and from the south, Bedouin citizens, as I've said, of unrecognized villages. So most of our investments were in the humanitarian aid department. But there were also other issues that we tackled. One was de-escalating tensions between Jews and Arabs, which was a great fear in the first days of October 7th. People were very worried that what we saw in May 2021, if you remember, intercommunal violence would erupt again. So we contacted organizations, people we know, people in the field, to make sure that they have the support they need to do de-escalating work, if it's with mayors of municipalities, if it's on the street. And luckily, we didn't see something like May 2021. I think it has to do with our work on that field, but it's not the complete story. The complete story is that there's been oppression of civil rights and human rights of especially the Palestinians in times of war. Their freedom of speech and expression has been severely limited since October 7th, and they've been monitored more severely, fired without due process. So the third bucket that we were investing in after October 7th was protecting civil liberties in times of war. We knew that activists on the field are more exposed. The people are feeling a lot of anger, and it can be pointed towards civil society. So we were very adamant at giving them the support they need. And the last one, which when I was giving these talks to donors and foundations during the months after October 7th, people were kind of laughing. But first they laugh at you and then they join you, was we were starting to think about the day after. We began thinking about the day after before October 7th, understanding that change must come. But it just seemed so evident that if we don't start preparing now, it's going to take us much, much longer. So those are the 4 buckets of the safety net response. I'm proud to say that due to the amazing work we're doing, the amazing work of NIF all around the world, we raised a good sum of money, which was put to use immediately into the field, and it really did make a difference through countless examples. And that was the NIF response, and it was a pretty good response. But I think after a few months where we kind of understood that this new emergency situation has become what we call now a emergency routine, which is kind of a paradox, but this is the reality we're living in. We need to, these issue areas need to be embedded into NIF's thinking for the long term. Safety net was something limited after October 7th, but now we need to look forward. We need to think, on a more strategic level, where are we headed and what are we doing?
And what is in that strategy ahead? Maybe you can tell us what are some of the main plans?
Sure. So I think the centerpiece of our new plans, our new programs, is what we call capturing the moment, seizing the moment, a vision for peace and security in Israel. And our investments in this are very large, and it goes into two main strategies. I'll try and be quick, but it's called building and blocking. So pretty easy to understand. Blocking is, the blocking strategy lays on existing work we've been doing for a long time, especially in the occupied West Bank, and it has to do with blocking the creeping annexation of the West Bank, and now we've added to the missions blocking any notions of resettlement in Gaza, through presence on the ground, monitoring human rights violations, supporting activists who live there, persecuting or pursuing violent settlers, etc. That is the blocking, and we've been doing it for a while, but we added, I think, a number of new organizations to this work. And the building part, it's newer. I mean, it also is built on existing work with existing partners. We have very organized and strategic think tanks, research institutes, messaging centers. Their goal in the building is to get Israelis and Palestinians back to the negotiating table where they've been gone from for too long. And it's a long process. It's public opinion campaigns. It's talking to a variety of Israeli society, not just to our own echo chamber. We are reaching out to different constituencies. We need to talk to our constituency, but we need to talk to the center as well. We need to convince them. And the way to convince them is through talking about peace, but also security. Security is top in mind for Israelis at the moment. We have to address it. And in fact, with polling that we're doing with the institute we're supporting, we see that when formulated as part of a regional agreement with Saudi Arabia, with peace, with security to Israel in place, there's a clear majority that want a two-state solution. So we have our data, we have our people, we have our investments, and we have our goal. That's one. I won't talk about all of them, don't worry. The second one is an investment we decided to make when we were, NIF is very interested in Jewish-Arab partnership, but also in the Palestinian society in Israel. We are often the sole fund who is working in this area, and we are definitely the ones, the vanguard, who people follow. And I think what we noticed when we did our strategizing was that the situation in Palestinian civil society within Israel isn't where it should be. They're lagging behind, and we let them lag behind. We haven't been investing as much as we should have. That comes into play with leadership, it comes into play with sustainability of organizations, and we've created a new plan. It's called Nasij, which is an Arabic tapestry, and its goal is to really build up Palestinian civil society in Israel through leadership programs, through new initiatives, and making mid-level organizations much more robust. And the last one that I'll talk about, unless you want to hear more, and then I could do the whole thing, is about equality and partnership in the Negev. The Negev, as you know, has been directly affected and hit by October 7th, and we also understand that it is an area where there will be a lot of investments by the state. Therefore, it will also be kind of a battle between Israeli society. Who gets to rebuild the Negev? Will it be the religious Zionists? Will it be the kibbutzim, the leftists who were evacuated? Will it take into account the Bedouin citizens of the Negev or not? Will it take into account the existing? So anyway, there are a lot of questions, and we are investing in organizations, and we're doing a lot of Shatil work, Shatil NAF's action arm, which organizes the field, convenes different organizations together, runs trainings. They're very active in the South right now to rebuild in a way that we think is proper, inclusive, and sustainable.
I wanted to ask you, I don't know if people fully understand the tension that sometimes NIF's work on the ground is demonized by very weak politicians who are seeking popularity, so they target the efforts on the ground, you know, for justice and equality. And when NIF's emergency response began, and it was probably maybe the most effective thing on the ground because ministers didn't even know what to do, and
we got phone calls from people working in government offices.
They were
saying,
receiving.
Yeah, can you help us? Yeah, like, it was ridiculous. I don't want to overstate, but it was really ridiculous and actually frightening to see the level of the bankruptcy of the state, which was just gone. I think it's, yeah.
So from a place of being in maybe one of the most effective like doings, because we all felt like we feel, what can I do? How can I, what can I do besides sharing, caring, crying, hurting? What is your tip to people, like the simple people like me, like maybe some of us who were not able to, you know, be in the forefront and be so active? Like, what are some concrete things that we can do?
Okay, so first of all, I think you already you're on the right trail if you're here sitting and you know of NIF or you're interested in getting to know NIF. I think this sets you on the right path. Because not everyone can do the work we can, but I do encourage everyone to get to know our work better, our organizations that we work with, choose something that you care about. But of course, none of this is possible without your support and your interest. And I think those two are intertwined. Support doesn't always come in the form of banknotes. It's also caring and wanting to be part and not giving up and you know, not giving up hope also. Because we're living in Israel, but we count on you, we depend on you, we need you with us. I've been to the States over the summer and I've met a lot of people, and the relationship between the people in Israel who believe in what NIF believes and the people abroad is very, very important. I feel this on a personal level. My mom's American and my dad is Israeli, and the connection between them is part of my life. But I feel it also on a political level and on a moral level, and I feel it on a Jewish level. And a lot of people ask me when I talk to them, give us, you know, a reason for hope, etc. And I'm sure you also want a reason for hope. So I put my hope in a few things. I won't name them all, but first of all, our amazing rising stars you will see soon. This is the hope. When the state is failing you, when your security, you can no longer count on it, when wishful thinking isn't helping, you can always go to our website and see the amazing people doing things on the ground, people who this is their life's mission. And I'm very happy and proud to be part of this event that we're honoring these activists. And I also think doing something, getting out of the despair loop, getting out of the sofa, getting out off of your screens, going to an NIF meeting, attending a parlor meeting, going to a protest, donating money, coming to Israel to hear more about the issues, to support us. All of these are things you can do that really make a difference. And I think inspire hope.
Hillel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, everyone.